Okie dokie, man. It is like, honestly, this was the position group that I was most excited to talk about. We ended our last show giving you guys a little hint that the wide receivers were coming up later this week. This was a big point of contention last year for the Chiefs as a whole. I think in the locker room, it was a challenge that they had to overcome in terms of chemistry, trust, and just really fighting it out throughout the entirety of the season to overcome all of the mental mistakes and errors that came from this group. I think the most interesting part about it is the Chiefs really didn't turn this roster group over a ton,
Yeah.
right? They kept a lot of those same guys in place. So it's going to be very telling on the success of the offseason based on, what they're going to get from their new additions. The Chiefs brought in Xavier Worthy, fastest prospect in NFL history, brought over a proven veteran wide receiver in Hollywood Brown, and also maintained a lot of those guys, like I said, from last year. So I don't know. Can they build on the chemistry? What is it going to look like coming into week one against the Baltimore Ravens? Andy Reid is already saying that's what's on their mind. That's all this coaching staff cares about. Steve Spagnuolo, same page. So, I don't know. I'm ready to dive into this position. I'm like mouth watering, ready to talk about these guys. How you feeling
Yeah.
tonight, Trey?
I'm good, man. And I'm on the same boat. It's exciting to talk about the skill players, especially after talking to O-line. Although I know I'm an O-line guy. I appreciate the guys, what they do in the trenches. But wide receivers, these are the guys that light up the scoreboard, right? And the game is turned from a running back centric offensive style of football that you and I grew up with in the early 2000s, and love to watch guys like Adrian Peterson and that class of running backs that dominated the league for years.
Oh yeah.
But it's shifted now, and these are the guys, these wide receivers, these are the guys that they put on the show. And NFL is a show, and they're the headliner of it outside of the quarterback play. You see from guys like Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, the Chiefs rolled in with a pretty similar, probably 70% of what they had last year, the wide receiver position, with a couple of those key additions that you've already spoke about. But um, obviously, when you're thinking wide receivers, just from last season, Rashee Rice's name pops up in your head.
Yep.
My first thought is always, man, this guy's going for 1,200 and 10 touchdowns. And then the second thought is, damn, is he going to play the full season? So that is kind of the one thing hanging over
Yep.
this wide receiver room right now, is wondering if Rashee Rice is going to be able to play a full slated season. And if he was, as a solidified number 2 on this offense, maybe even creep into a looking at a number 1 if he can overtake Marquise Brown, which I think the potential is there. I think there's just a doom and gloom over Rashee Rice still, with the looming suspension from his offseason antics. So outside of that, obviously Marquise Brown, he's a stud. He's had a kind of a roller coaster of a career so far, of number from a statistics standpoint, being up and down with different quarterbacks in different situations and injuries. But Xavier Worthy already caught a 55-yard bomb from Patrick Mahomes across the body, rolling out. And that was day 1 of training camp. So to say Chiefs fans at this point are excited would be an absolute understatement for what
Oh
was
yeah.
obviously our greatest weakness on the Chiefs team last year, was this wide receiver group.
Well, something that's getting pointed out from last season, and I think it's kind of an underrated statistic when it comes to the performance of the receiving core and the pass catchers. We'll include tight ends here too. Really, it's the drops that people want to talk about,
Yeah.
or maybe someone didn't run this route correctly, or tipped it up for an interception. Those are all valid topics of conversation when you're talking about this wide receiver group, because really we're bringing back damn near everybody. Rashee Rice, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross, McCole Hardman, all of these guys played a significant role in the passing game. And if you look at the tight end side, obviously we're bringing the Hall of Famer back in Kelsey. Noah
Yeah.
Gray is another guy that's coming back for year 4 in this offense. The thing that people are not talking about enough is the average depth on the touchdown passes. We were sitting right around 4.9 yards on average per touchdown. What that told me is we just were not taking the top off of these defenses, and we would drive the field into the red zone. And if we got lucky, we could throw one in. We weren't running them in.
Yeah.
And points were down for this team last year. So this is the thing that I'm the most excited about in seeing that Xavier Worthy clip, is that this is an opportunity for us to be a deep threat down the field again. Because it's not going to be all the attention's focused on Tyreek Hill 2.0.
Yeah.
There's dangerous pieces throughout this receiving core now. Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice coming off a 980-yard season. Travis Kelce's going to come out and do what he does, probably get another 1,000 yards. Xavier Worthy, rookies typically don't get a lot of play in this offense, but I think in an Andy Reid offense rather. But I think this might be a different situation. I think Rashee Rice's career has proven that maybe that trend is going to change. So just looking at what we have in the top 4 pass catchers, from Worthy to Brown to Rice to Kelce, Worthy's listed as a starter right now on the first depth chart that's released for the for training camp.
Yeah.
Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Tony, all kind of behind those guys. Tony was getting reps at running back.
Yep, sure was.
Okay. So I don't know. I just feel like this is going to be such a dynamic group in what we're able to do. Maybe they're carving out a Deebo Samuel type of role for Kadarius Toney so that he doesn't have to catch passes 10 yards down the field anymore. He can run a little bubble screen and we'll call it good there. So, maybe that's going to be the situation for this team. And I think the film that is put out during training camp is going to paint that picture for Chiefs fans on what to expect, and also to opposing teams of the Chiefs to say, okay, these guys are a lot more dynamic. It's not just going to be dump it to Kelce on a slant or hit Kelce on a seam or give Pacheco the ball inside the tackles.
Yeah.
It's going to be something a lot more different, a lot more dynamic, and something that teams have not seen since 2019, 2020.
Yeah, and something that's also different with this season, or coming into this season, is the depth at the tight end position. Now, obviously, the last 3 years, as you said, going on 4 now, Noah Gray has always been that solidified number 2 tight end. He's a stud. But now we have the rookie tight end out of TCU, where he's came in and that I think they call it pre-camp. The 3 days where the rookies come in.
Rookie mini camp.
The training camp there. I think it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week, and quarterbacks come in for that as well. But in this pre-camp, man, it was like the conversation was continuous about the depth at the tight end position, and really Andy Reid has been known for running 2 or 3 tight end sets. So we could also see that flexibility with the offense at the depth with the tight end, where we got 2 or 3 tight ends out there, and maybe even 2 on line, 1 split out wide with Xavier Worthy or Brown out wide as well, and kind of create that more of a look over here and I'm going to toss it down here to somebody else you're not looking for. So I think that's going to just amplify what Andy Reid does with an offense with the depth that we have at tight end.
100%. 100%. I couldn't agree more. Noah Gray, learning behind Travis Kelce, has shown flashes that he can be what I think is an every down tight end.
Yeah.
And come in and take those reins, potentially moving forward from Kelce. Now, you want to see him get some more reps in the offense, and that's really just not going to happen while Travis Kelce is on the roster. But as long as he's healthy, of course, and I'll knock on wood for that. But Jared Wiley, this guy is a physical specimen, dude. 6'5", 250, ran a 4.6 right? I mean, this guy can really move, didn't have a single drop in college, didn't have a ton of targets, didn't have a ton of receptions in 4 years, but he didn't have a single drop, so he's sure-handed whenever he does get the ball thrown to him. And Irv Smith Jr. is one of those guys that has shown promise. He just hasn't been able to overcome his injury history, really. He's constantly finding himself in places where he's not able to suit up on Sundays, and in our cases, in the Chiefs' case rather, be Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think we play every one of those days. But there's situations where he's just not able to suit up, and I think with having this kind of depth, having this unit that features so many different types of styles, that's going to give him an opportunity to come in and make an impact when he can see the field, and also limit the time that he has to spend on the field to not have to get injured. I mean, really, those two things are playing in his favor. I 100%, unless Irv Smith just bombs in training camp, I personally don't see a situation in which the Chiefs don't carry all four of these guys into the roster coming into the year. I think a lot of that just speaks to, what Andy Reid wants to do. Now, with that being said, what does that mean for the wide receivers, right? Because you can't come in with, I mean, look at the guys that we have on the chart right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those guys with the two additions. 6 of those were on the roster last year. 2 more brings it to 8. There's going to be some competition there. And these tight ends are what I think is going to eat into some of those spots. Just looking at the depth chart right now, who do you see from the wide receiver side of things that's maybe in most jeopardy?
I think there it's going to go with experience, and they're going to look for guys who have experience either in the NFL or have experience at big time colleges, or guys that, Andy Reid's pretty big also at this point. Now I say this, Andy Reid is big on training camp performance. If you are a guy who underperformed in the combine, drafted low, and made your way into St. Joe with the Chiefs for training camp, but you actually absolutely go out there, bust your ass, and make a lot of good football plays, Andy Reid's going to give you a shot. So looking at that, it's really hard to tell, to kind of pick a guy that may not have that opportunity, because any one of those young guys that we have in the wide receiver room who's not your top 5 name, those guys could come out and make an impact. And we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago with guys making a roster spot based on having flexibility at the tail end of the position group, but also being able to have an impact in special teams, right? So if you got guys that can also come out and play hard football for Dave Toub, then that's going to change your status on this football team. Because especially Andy Reid knows just as well as or probably better than any other football coach in the NFL, that special teams is a huge momentum shifter, but also it plays such a crucial role in the game of football. And so if you can have an impact there, that's just going to increase your opportunities with the Chiefs.
Absolutely. In looking at the roster, Nico Remigio is a guy last year that was getting a lot of fan praise coming into the season. He didn't end up making the roster, hung around on training camp. I think he got injured a little bit. Cornell Powell, one of those guys we drafted a couple years back, really hasn't been able to break the ceiling on the roster. I think with the depth that the Chiefs have on the offensive side of the ball, those two guys have an uphill battle to get there. But here's the thing that you really have to remember, like injuries can play a part in this too. Unfortunately, that's the case. So there could be situations where one of our guys ends up, on the PUP, or has to spend the first 3 weeks, out, where they're having to rotate one of these other guys up. So all the point in me saying that is that any of these guys that don't make the roster for week 1 or for those final cuts, I think you can 100% expect them to find themselves on the Chiefs practice squad. They're going to have a stable of these pass catchers for Patrick Mahomes so that we can overcome any of those potential injuries or things that might happen. So, I don't know. I mean, I think Sky Moore has some challenges here. Maybe he's a practice squad guy. Justin Ross, injuries, that whole deal.
Yep.
McCole Hardman, to your point, definitely going to be able to contribute more on special teams than some of these other guys that we're looking at. Kadarius Toney, we'll see how dynamic he can be, but the preseason is going to be a wild show from these guys because they're going to be doing everything they can to earn their spot, and it's going to be super competitive.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not trying to play the bias card here, but I think this is the most talent top to bottom that I've seen in a pass catching group for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe you can include the 2019 year as like the closest challenge, but I mean, even
Oh yeah.
beyond Sammy Watkins, there really wasn't anyone that jumped off the page to you on that depth chart. Maybe Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson at times could do some things, but like you're even laughing kind of hearing those names, you know? It's like, I don't know. I feel like top to bottom, let's just look at it from a starter perspective, right? The most guys you can put on the field at a time for Patrick Mahomes is Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. Maybe you get one more wide receiver in there. I'm probably going to say, I don't know, Justin Watson or
Yeah.
Tony gets that nod. Maybe you put another tight end there with Noah Gray,
Yep.
try and get him some play in the flex or whatever you want to do there with him. That group, I mean, you got to feel pretty damn confident you're converting on third and whatever, fourth and whatever, in whatever scenario, especially if you're Patrick Mahomes and you know that you can build up the trust with that unit. You already have trust with Kelce, obviously. You have trust with Rashee Rice and what you've been able to do. He trusts him to throw a 60-yard bomb if we're talking Xavier Worthy. And Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown, he's a pro. He's going to come and get it done. He's had statistical ups and downs. I agree with what you said earlier. But the situations he was in, just to kind of elaborate on that, Lamar Jackson being the quarterback in Baltimore, he eclipsed 1,000 yards one of those seasons. Obviously, couldn't do it for any of his other seasons in Baltimore. But when he had a healthy Kyler Murray and when he himself was healthy in those scenarios, he balled out in Arizona. So I don't know. Those potentials got me excited for what's coming to the field for Kansas City.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just to wrap this conversation here, I think the only argument you have for the most talented offensive weapons in Kansas City since Patrick Mahomes has been here, I think is the 2019 team, as you said. But I think the difference there is the peak performance you were receiving from Tyreek Hill, right? You could argue that that was the best Tyreek Hill the NFL has seen. You could argue that that was the best Travis Kelce that the NFL has ever seen. Obviously he's had his downs pretty much really kind of since maybe the last 3 years. He's kind of been a downward trend. Not to say he's not playing ball or anything like that. Don't get crazy on me. But, he's definitely
Stay
not
calm. Stay calm.
peaking, definitely not peaking to where he was in 2019, right? When him and Pat kicked it off. So I think that's the only argument. Whereas this team we have now, these offensive weapons we have now are more lateral than we are, vertical as far as peak performance. But that doesn't go to diminish anything those guys on the team are going to do now. As you said, Marquise Brown, stud. Xavier Worthy, rookie. I mean, he's already already listed as a starter on the roster. I think that speaks volumes to what this team is going to look like this year.
100%. Just to kind of talk Travis Kelce here to end the episode. You're not wrong, right? He had a down year last year, missed the first game, sat out the last game of the year when he could have eclipsed 1,000 for a third straight year. His yards per game dropped 13 yards from where we were the last time. So, uh, so I mean, those are all things that are valid points. But you got to factor in the health here, what that's going to look like. I don't think anyone can predict really what he's doing. So, there's always that potential that he's going to come back and maybe have a little bit of a resurgence before he calls it a career. So
Yep.
I'll keep my mind in the positivity area best as possible on that one.
Thank you. We all need that. All right, Dan. I think that's a wrap for the show today. Hit the wide receivers, hit the tight ends, and then next week we'll jump into another group and dive into what the Chiefs are looking like at that point. We'll be over a week of training camp, so we'll kind of see things shake out a little bit and kind of have a decent idea of where this team is headed and what the weaknesses are, what the strengths are moving into the rest of training camp, and then eventually into that first game against Jacksonville for the preseason, man.
Dude, I am pumped. I think this might be usually I try to catch as much of the starting play as I can during the preseason. This might be one of those situations where I intently watch throughout the entirety of the preseason game and really just get a full take on what this competition is going to be like for the receivers and the pass catchers in general. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
fun to see what they do. So
Yep.
appreciate everybody. Make sure you follow the show at the fastest underscore 40 IGX. We do have a Facebook page as well where we're putting some things out. So that's going to be ramping up as we get into the season. So go ahead and check us out there on social media and like and share anything on YouTube as well. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Let's go Chiefs.